Welcome to the Powercat Podcast, the original K-State sports show. Here's your host, Tim Fitzgerald.
Welcome to a groggy edition of the Powercat Postgame Podcast. Fairly early morning, maybe Big B will be joining us. He did what all K-Staters needed to do this morning, went and got religion. What a night at the Bill. Tim Fitzgerald joined by Cole Carmody and Ryan Gilbert. Hold on, we're missing something very important. Now they know who we are. Now we know who they are. Our settings were all off. Welcome to the show. This is my first one of the year. I want to give a shout out to Brian Big B Hanley and Monty Spiller, our two football analysts at GoPowercat, for absolutely crushing the post-game podcast while the three of us were in Dublin. It was a really good addition. And today we're going to talk about something they didn't get to talk about, a victory, but I think the team played much worse. So the opponent was of a lower level. Actually, I thought North Dakota did a spectacular job of being prepared and executing and taking advantage of the lack of, I don't know, what's the word? I used lackadaisical with Chris Kleiman. He denied that. I think that was too soft of a word. Excuse my Sunday morning language. It's like they got no give a shit. They just don't seem to care. And I think it's become very obvious that these players are being very mechanical and going through the motions and not even doing that well, instead of just playing with heart and passion. Some guys do, but other guys don't. And honestly, I don't think the coaches are doing them any favors along the way. So we're going to dig into it. If you've got questions, as we're live now on Twitter, X and YouTube, make sure you drop them in the comments. We'd love to know what you think and what you would like discussed. Guys, before we delve into another topic that I want to talk about or give someone a shout out, Cole, give me your Sunday morning thoughts on what we saw at the Bill in that 38-35 undeserved victory by the Wildcats.
Yeah, somehow I walk away from this game feeling worse about this team than I did after the Iowa State game. And you're right, Fitz. I think that they walked into this game feeling like they were the superior team. And we listened to the players talk after the game, and they owned up to it. They said that they had to play better. They didn't play good. And they all, these are my words here, but they all sounded incredibly frustrated and incredibly mad about them, about the outcome of the game. I had never been around a team that had talked about performances like that after a win. And so I want to, as we start the show, tell everyone that is out there. So it's not like we're the only ones sitting up here calling out their play, because they did that as well. And Chris Kleiman did, and we'll get into that. But my thoughts on this game are, I feel like Kansas State, like I said, they thought they were the better team. And when they took a 10-point lead in the second half, because that's really kind of the teetering point of this game, I'll excuse a first half because, people don't want to hear the excuse of the Ireland hangover, and the players didn't want to talk about it. The coaches didn't want to talk about it. But history suggests that there has been a letdown for every single team, at least one team who played in that game the following week. And it just so happened to be for Kansas State against North Dakota in that game. Not saying that it's good. It just happened. I'm willing to accept one half of bad football if you can put together a dominant second half. And K-State put together a really dominant third quarter, guys. North Dakota had negative 10 yards in the third quarter. They had a 10-point lead, and they had the ball on the North Dakota side of the field, driving to go score a touchdown. If they score a touchdown to go up 17 points there, the game is over, and we're not having this conversation, and we're talking about the next game. But they didn't, and that's really where I got confused, and I'm sure we're going to talk about it. But the fourth quarter compared to the third quarter was the exact opposite. And so I think it was the lack of focus and the lack of detail that is incredibly concerning. And guys, I don't think it has much to do with the coaching staff. I'm putting that on the players because, as Chris Kleiman said, the discipline was not there in the fourth quarter, and that is incredibly, incredibly concerning.
Yeah, Cole, you bring up a good point with speaking with the players in postgame. If you were to tell me players would be upbeat and not hitting the panic button after one of these first two games, you would think it would be the win. But the vibes, just with speaking with the players, were complete opposites here After Iowa State, they were fine. They knew it was a long season ahead, and they were looking forward. After Saturday night, they knew they'd have to be better. And so that was probably with Iowa State to kind of intertwine the way that the season has started with the first 2 games. I was okay with the notion of easing into the year and not hitting the panic button. It's a long season. One loss doesn't have to define you, but you have to go out the next weekend and play your ass off and go dominate an FCS team who, quite frankly, is not that good, if we can be blunt. Not one of the big dogs in the FCS. I'm sure Chris Kleiman would tell you that. I know he's got immense respect for that level of play, but K-State needed to go out, and I think my score prediction was like 50-something to 6. That was the game that K-State needed and obviously did not get. So you go out and play in Ireland, and you don't have the bye week afterwards because you want to keep things going. Well, this was not keeping things going. K-State, last night, 12 hours ago, looked like it was playing its first game of the season. Between the special teams blunders and dropped passes, guys, it was just a very frustrating night.
It was. It really was. Thank goodness for that third quarter. K-State doesn't win. K-State actually loses by double digits to North Dakota without that third quarter. And yet I'm pissed off about the third quarter, not because of the third quarter, but because it was so easy to replicate the other 3 quarters, and they didn't care to do so. And I select the word care precisely. This seems to be a choice. We're good enough to go through the motions. No, you're not. We're good enough to just be kind of mechanical and not actually make big plays, drop passes, fumble the ball. And I see Orphan over here, which, by the way, is a great screen name, asking about special teams. Folks, I'm losing my mind. I'm losing my mind to the point where a lot of people don't understand, as in the media, we're not supposed to get emotional and ask, these fiery questions. We see people in the media do it, but that's not our role. Our role is to ask questions, but do it in kind of a scientific manner. Does that make sense? But I'm getting there on special teams. The special teams at Kansas State are absolute bull crap right now. It is one of the proudest traditions of special teams in the history of college football, and I haven't done a study on that, but I feel safe in saying that. And the man in charge of that tradition seems incompetent. I don't understand what's going on and how you can hire Nate Ketzer out of the NFL, and this is what we get. This is what the fans are seeing. Your average fan knows the importance of special teams to the success of this program more than the damn coach in charge of it. I rarely call out a coach by name, but I am absolutely fed up with that product. I'm astonished. And if there's one fault of Chris Kleiman, is sometimes he's too loyal. That's a Bill Snyder trait, by the way. Bill Snyder never fired a coach. Not once. The only coach ever fired was when he was on medical leave, and Sean did it by written note. But Bill Snyder demanded the coaches get better at their jobs. And if they didn't, they were told, I'm not firing you, but your life's going to be really unfun. You might want a job hunt. Now, I want to give a shout out before we get too far into this and I start delving into Cole. Take a look at those questions and see what one hops out at you. One of my pet peeves is people saying you didn't ask any hard questions in the post-game press. Yes, we did. Our job, though, isn't to be confrontational, like I just mentioned. I'm getting there with special teams, but that's not our job. That we're not here to react like a fan. We're just trying to get answers and understand what took place. And I thought we did that fairly well. I mean, actually, Chris Kleiman was fairly accountable in that. I think we all agree. If you listen to what he said. He's not one to, throw anyone under the bus or curse or any of that in a media setting, but I thought he held people to account. Marty Wright on X made that, no hard questions. I asked him, what do you want to ask? What did we miss? And usually it's, why don't you yell at him? Why don't you get in his face? And that's not our job. Marty Wright, though, says, here's the question he wanted to ask. And I'm giving him a shout out in a positive way. We have arguably the best dual threat quarterback in the Big 12, and midway through the fourth quarter, he had 9 yards rushing. Why? That's going to get asked Monday. Thank you, Marty, for the good question. That's a good way to phrase it. Why? Why is Avery Johnson suddenly not a threat in the running game? Why did they take him off the table? I don't understand this. And why has he lost his instinct to turn the ball upfield? You go back to that first season when he scored all those touchdowns at Tech, and even his first touchdown when it was a opponent like North Dakota. I'm totally spacing who it was.
Simo.
Was that?
Simo.
Yeah, Simo. And he was going to his right and saw a gap and just cut it upfield into the end zone. We saw him just string everything out and run to the sideline a couple times when he had alleys to turn it up. One was a glaring alley. You just put your foot in the ground and go north and south. He finally did it in that fourth quarter, in that final drive, when for about the sixth time of the game, they gave him a wide open running alley and he took it instead of throwing the ball. If they've coached him to be careful and don't get hurt, you're sucking the life out of a dual threat quarterback. A dual threat quarterback needs to know when to take the chances, when to put the shoulder down, when to run, and how to do it in the most efficient way. Take the gap and then get outside. Don't just keep running to the sideline hoping you can turn the corner, because if you're Dylan Edwards, you might pull that off. But you look at Avery stats. This is what today's daily delivery is about. Colin, I want you to respond to this, and Gills. They're not bad. They're actually pretty good stats. And yet something's missing. I think it's just fire. I think it's playing with passion and emotion, all things that are usually outside of Avery's tool bag. But he's going to have to do that. I feel like the offense is way too mechanical right now and not playing with much passion, including Avery.
So you said a lot of good things there, Fitz. And I'm going to say the first thing that you closed with, what is he missing? And I don't think it's being talked about enough, because I think it's a real difference maker. But not having Dylan Edwards on the field is a difference maker. Last year he had DJ Giddens. The year before he had DJ Giddens. And then there was Ben Sinnott. He has Jace Brown right now. That's it. And not having Dylan Edwards is a bigger the deal than people want to talk about, because those two guys play off of one another. They both have game-breaking speed. I look at Avery Johnson right now, and I'm going to use a baseball comparison here, because Avery Johnson is looking like a line drive hitter who's trying to hit home runs. And instead of playing within his game, which is using his legs, getting out of the pocket, he is trying to muscle up and hit the ball 450 feet. And sometimes he will. But instead of trying to hit 40 home runs in a season and hit 220, he needs to hit 15 home runs in a season and hit 300. And we've seen him do that. And he needs to use his legs more. If that means not throwing for 320 yards, that means throwing for 220 yards and rushing for 100. I think that's what needs to happen. And, I look at that game last night and I look at Avery. Could he have thrown multiple interceptions in that game? Yeah, he could. And there's people who, K-State fans, say, oh, well, he didn't play that good because he threw 4 interceptions. They just didn't catch him. And I'm like, okay, that's great, right? Sure. But you don't talk about Donovan McIntosh dropping an interception with how good Rocco Beck played on last Saturday in Ireland. You don't talk about People talk about Patrick Mahomes throwing almost interceptions every single Sunday, and yet he still finds a way to lead his team to victory. So I don't put any stock whatsoever in that. If it becomes a trend where he is throwing interceptions, sure, we can look at it. But remember 2 years ago, guys, when Adrian Martinez refused to throw the ball down the field because he was deathly afraid of making a mistake. Will Howard comes in 2022 and starts firing it in there. I remember a touchdown pass against Baylor that he threw right between a defender's hands that ended up as a touchdown, and he was praised for it. Well, he started throwing a few more interceptions the next year, and people were mad. I think Avery needs to continue this gunslinger mentality that he's had, but he also needs to mix in his running ability. I don't think he's that far off from getting to the next level. In fact, I think he's really close. And when he gets number 3 back, I really think that could be the difference in taking this offense to the next level, guys. But they scored 38 points last night. You can score 38 points against an FCS team and still feel very good. Did they make some mistakes offensively? They sure did. But I'm not really concerned about Avery, because I think that run at the end of the game is going to serve as a light bulb moment. At least you have to hope it does if you're K-State, because he is dangerous with his legs. And if teams want to blitz him, then he needs to take that every single time.
You mentioned that run towards the end of the game, Cole. Guys, that was K-State's best drive, maybe of the season, from start to finish, right? I know there was a dropped pass early from Tibbs, and rather than panicking, everybody, including Avery, kind of hit the reset button. So K-State was able to get big chunk plays on that drive as well. But, I mean, they ended up with a touchdown, and the urgency was high, right? You have to go score a touchdown in the 2-minute drill, down 35-31. Kansas State needs to play with that energy on every drive. You go to Iowa State, Kansas State had 3 drives down by a touchdown or more in that Iowa State game. All 3 of those resulted in touchdowns. So when K-State's back's against the wall, we're seeing this team, this offense play well. When it has to go score, it has. And when it's a close game or you're ahead, and I don't know if it's a lack of urgency, you're hiding the playbook, you want to keep Avery healthy, that's neither here nor there, but something's going on, probably mentally, where the will to want to go score isn't as high as it needs to be. Guys, this is college football. I mean, you get 12 of these, maybe 13 or more, if you're lucky, a year. You suit up, you dream about this as a kid. To not go out and just give it your 1,000% every play is very frustrating. I know I think I said frustrating to end out my first answer, and I just said it again. That's just the best way to sum up the first 2 games. Frustrating.
I'm frustrated with your answers.
Okay, fair enough.
Let's get some questions here, some comments. This one from my guy, Ryan Traub. Oh, Brian, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but is this team even going to win 5 games? Not in its current state. They play like that, they're going to have problems with Arizona and UCF. They're better than North Dakota, I would think. And I don't want to say North Dakota's a bad team. I saw someone throwing out stats from last season. This is a different coach. Yeah. This is a different program. They brought in quarterbacks. I thought their quarterback was really pretty good. And I thought they looked much more polished than Kansas State. I can't explain that. That shouldn't happen. Let's just be really honest here. Second week in a row, K-State's coaches got out-coached. And this time, I think much more dramatically than last week in Dublin against Iowa State. You were just out-coached completely by an FCS program. I'm going to hop on Amazon and ship about 10 mirrors to the football complex so they can look in it.
You guys know this was the questions podcast last week. Somebody asked, more likely, get to Arlington or get a 6-win season. I think you guys both went Arlington. I kind of entertained the thought of, you'd have to really tank, but it could happen. Well, after Saturday night, man, you've got to really improve, even if you just want to make a bowl game, let alone win, however many you destined to win.
I'd like to retract my previous statements on that question.
I'll say this, guys. I think that last night, the only way you could look at this as a positive, literally the only way, is if it serves as, like you mentioned, Fitz, a look in the mirror. And not just for the coaching staff, but for the team as well. Because sometimes it's easier to learn from wins than losses. But there's zero way. I'm just telling you guys, zero way as a player you can walk out of that game and say, oh, yeah, if we play like that, we'll win. Because they won't. And next week they play Army. And I know this is the post game, and we're going to have all week to talk about Army. But all Chris Kleiman could talk about in the post game press conference was discipline, discipline, discipline. If you're not disciplined against Army, then you're going to lose. And so they're forcing you. Army is literally forcing you to be disciplined. So the one thing that you can focus on and you can work on is your eye discipline. And in a way, I actually think that's a good thing because K-State needs to get that fixed, and they need to get it fixed ASAP. And when you are focusing on one singular thing this week against Army, then that could end up helping them. And as a commenter points out, very correctly, Army did look horrible on Friday. I think that North Dakota is going to be better than Army. Army might have their backup quarterback, and we'll see what happens with the injury to Dwayne Coleman. But, yeah, I think that this game last night, guys, was just an indicator of the definition of a wake-up call. The loss to Iowa State's not a wake-up call. You lose a good game to a Big 12 opponent on a neutral site field by one score. It's not a wake-up call. Those games are going to happen. K-State could have easily won. But this is a wake-up call. And so we're going to find out. Is this going to be the kind of team that we're going to see the rest of the season, or are they going to fix it and play to their potential? I still believe in what Chris Kleiman has in that locker room because there is a ton of talent on there. There's no denying that this might be one of the top 3 most talented teams that Chris Kleiman has had in his tenure. And we've seen 1 year. We all don't count the COVID season. That's fine. But we've seen 1 year where things have not worked. I believe that this coaching staff will find a way to right the ship because when stuff like this happens, they typically do.
With Iowa State not being a wake-up call, I agree, right? You can learn from your losses, and to shout out some of our former Wildcats on our weekly roundup on GoPowercat, you can learn from losses. And if you turn the page, and there's a comment right here, this is exactly where I was going, Eastern Kentucky.
Yep.
In 2011, early on in the year, Curry Sexton posted that on X Saturday night. Kansas State went on to have a really damn good year in 2011, despite that blunder, barely squeaking by a bad team. And so it doesn't have to define your season, but you have to learn something from games like this. Kansas State didn't learn, it doesn't seem like anything from the Iowa State game. And that's what's frustrating about that. So I don't want to be a sunshine pumper and say, oh, everything's going to be okay. Look at 2011, but the season is not over. You just have to learn stuff from your poor performances. It seems like at this point, not only from week to week, but quarter by quarter and halftime, did Kansas State make any adjustments that make you say, wow, that gives me confidence that this team can win in the Big 12. And Cole, I know you said after the Iowa State game that if it's not broken, don't fix it. You don't necessarily fault K-State for not making those adjustments. That's fine. I can get behind that. But schematically, you should outcoach an FCS program. In the trenches, I'm sure if Big B's going to hop on, he can probably take the cake on not dominating in the trenches against an FCS opponent. That was probably the most embarrassing part of Saturday night's game, that K-State wasn't able to just flat out win on the offensive and defensive line. But you can go forward and build off of something like this, but you have to learn from it. And so far, Kansas State just seemingly has not learned from anything.
It's so perplexing, Fitz, before I let you jump in. It's so perplexing because they did make adjustments in the second half because the third quarter, again, they did nothing defensively or offensively. North Dakota did absolutely nothing offensively in the third quarter. K-State made halftime adjustments. They came back and they played the game like we thought they would. And then in the fourth quarter, just completely changed. It's the most perplexing thing I've seen in a long time of how that happens. And, I do want to shout out the defensive line a little bit because it was pretty clear in the second half of that game that they were going to have to throw the ball. They, being North Dakota, is going to have to throw the ball in order to be successful. And, they definitely had some runs in the fourth quarter, but, you end up and you see what they ended up with their rushing stats. It's not exactly very good. They averaged 3.1 yards a rush. I get that there were some long runs in there, but once again, K-State holding their opponent to under 4 yards of carry. I think there's something to that, but I don't know what it is because they still have some glaring holes on this defense.
The difference for me between Eastern Kentucky and what we saw was the defense was good against Eastern Kentucky. And if your defense is good, you're in games. And they were in the game despite bad offense. This was on the defense. I thought the offense actually, I mean, they did okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I scored 38 points for heaven's sakes against a FCS defense, but I thought Kansas State's defense was pitiful. And I'm not just calling out players. I'm going to call out the defensive coordinator who I like a lot, Joe Clanderman. I want to know why in the fourth quarter with the game on the line, what did VJ Payne do to get yanked out of the game with the ball around the 20-yard line? And I'm going to say this, VJ isn't playing as well as VJ can play. VJ's got NFL skill that he's not even tapping into. But, and I think Logan Bartley's going to be one hell of a football player, but he's a true freshman. You took out your veteran safety, put in a true freshman, and guess who was out of position, and they ran right through his gap. Touchdown, one play. He was in for one play. That's on the coaches. Last week, I saw important pass situations, and Toby's standing next to the coaches over there on the sidelines. The biggest disruptor you have on the defensive line. I don't give a shit whose turn it is to play. Your dudes need to be in place when it's time for the dudes. Speaking of dudes, here we go. He's here. He's got a little religion in him. And he's with us. Big B, we got a lot to talk about on the Insiders tomorrow. We'll be live tomorrow evening, probably 8. We'll see what everyone's schedule is tomorrow. But we got to save a little mustard for that, but we're venting pretty hard right now. What was your biggest takeaway from that pitiful performance by the Kansas State Wildcats?
I mean, there's a lot, but what I would say is a realization, and this is tough for K-State fans, but a realization that we are not good enough to beat average level FCS teams by playing vanilla football.
Yep.
That's the realization, is that we are not a good enough team that we can't just line up, run the ball when we want to run it, stop the run, sack the quarterback, that we can't just physically dominate them in every aspect. We're not good enough to do that. Third quarter, we were good enough to do that. But if you noticed, we started doing a little different things, especially on defense. We started blitzing all the time, which, again, I've been an advocate of. If you can never get pressure and you always have to blitz to be able to get pressure, how good is your defense really? Like, how good? We can keep saying that they are, but if that's the only time you're getting, but again, it's an FCS team. I just couldn't believe that we just couldn't do anything. Like, you can't just, okay, we're going to line up, we're going to run downhill, we're going to run outside zone, we're going to throw the ball, we're actually going to complete pass, the guys are going to catch it, we're going to stop people. We couldn't do any of that stuff. And if you're not good enough to stop and just physically dominate a FCS opponent, a mid-level one at that, you got problems. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to give the excuse of, hey, they came back from Ireland. Okay, fine, they came back from Ireland. You know, and people were kind of building in that excuse already, but Lord have mercy, to just have no fire. I mean, none, nobody. Just, I don't know. It was disappointing,
Yeah,
to say the least.
But this Ireland stuff is crap.
Yeah. Yeah.
At most, you're a 23-year-old.
Correct.
When I was 23, I could go out drinking all night and go do stuff. I don't understand. You rode a plane.
Yeah.
I did too. Our travel was all much worse than a direct flight from Dublin to Kansas City. God, that would have been fantastic. I wouldn't have spent 5 hours in O'Hare. I wouldn't have driven 2 hours plus Gills did too, from the Wichita airport to Manhattan, arriving at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
Old dude was at the press conference. 9 hours later. Don't be using this as an excuse or even a thought. BS. It's
Let alone the fact that you got to play. I wouldn't call Iowa State a warm-up game because that was a Big 12 opponent, but you have a game under your belt. Those funks and the rusts, that should have all been left in Dublin. None of that should have came back to Manhattan, and a lot of those mistakes made the trip over across the Atlantic.
I'm going to say this too. I really believe that a big part of this game was K-State walking into this game thinking that they are K-State and that is North Dakota and they will win. And that is it. And it's very dangerous to have that attitude. And it doesn't matter what you're doing. If you don't give your opponent any respect whatsoever, stuff like that is going to happen. And again, as we've talked about this morning, if that's the attitude they're going to have, then they're not going to win very many football games. It's just plain and simple. They don't have to have that attitude. It's a choice. But I've seen a lot of people on not just here in the comments on our message boards, wherever, talk about, oh, well, the coaches need to take them out to the field. I had somebody say, if they really want to win, then all the players will be out at the field in the morning running until they throw up, and the coaches will be chewing them and making them, do all these hard things. And a comment here from Orphan, who appreciate you watching. We need old school coaches that will actually motivate and be hard on these players who have hundreds of thousands in their bank account. I don't disagree. I think that the coaches need to take some responsibility here, but it's not the way that it used to be. You can't coach kids in 2025 like you coach kids in 1995. And so, yes, the coaches can take accountability, but the players have to have some accountability more than anything else, because as we all know, this is a player-led team. They talked about that. If it's a player-led team, then it's time for the players to step up and make some changes. The coaches cannot be the ones to motivate you. You cannot, as a coach, you can't motivate someone to go play a college football game. That has to be internal. It cannot be external. And that's what I'll say about that. It's not the coach's responsibility to get the players motivated to play a football game. That's just ridiculous. And I'm not calling out any of the commenters. I'm saying that it's ridiculous on the players' end.
I agree. The team leadership, the player leadership has to take over at some point. But unfortunately, instead of getting them prepared to win a football game, to be tough enough, it looks like they're leading them to go get a mani-pedi.
We should go do that, Fitz, me and you.
The thing is
I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying it's not appropriate for a football.
I mean, I've said this before, and I got a little pushback from K-State fans, but I'll say it again because it's 100% the truth. Like, who's the ass in the locker room? Like, you have to have those guys in a locker room. You can't just have a bunch of nice guys in there. I'm not saying that you – because people always equate somebody to being an ass as a criminal. It doesn't mean that at all. It just means that there's a guy in the locker room. There's several guys in the locker room that are just going to be jerks, that aren't going to stand for mediocrity and are going to get in people's faces, whether it's a DB, an offensive lineman, a kicker. They don't care who you are. If you're not doing your job, you're going to get held accountable. I just don't see it. They can talk about it all they want. We're watching the football games. We can see that the lack of passion. So you can tell me whatever you want. Fine. But we're watching. We don't see it. So whatever you're saying, it isn't working. And to piggyback off of what you said, Cole, I think you're right, but you got to take it a step further. Coaches get paid to get their kids ready to play football. So I'm with you. The players got to hold themselves accountable more than anybody. But so do coaches. It's literally their job to get guys ready to play football. And if you're not going to do that or can't, then that's a problem in itself. But I think it just kind of goes back to, I mean, do you want to be the best that you can possibly be? I mean, we can say that. That's a crazy question to even bring up here. But I just watched a football game, an entire football game that lacked passion. The whole thing lacked passion, because you're not going to be able to convince me that K-State physically it shouldn't be able to dominate these guys. You're never going to be able to convince me of that. So, because I watched them play against Iowa State, and they didn't get physically just dominated. They got beat, but they didn't get physically dominated. And so I don't know. It just seems like there's a lack of passion, a lack of want to. Hey, we're just kind of what you said at the beginning, Fitz. We're just going to roll the ball out, and we're just going to go out there and win. Well, no, you're not, and no, you didn't. Like they acted like this was worse than a spring ball scrimmage. The kind of passion out there was pathetic. I'm like, what are we doing, guys? At least compete. And they didn't even compete. I think even if they would have just competed, they would have won by 2 touchdowns. They didn't even compete. It was pathetic. It literally was pathetic, guys. I apologize, but I'm perplexed. A team that's supposed to be so good, we haven't seen that from anybody.
17 minutes. They dominated. That was it. That's a 60-minute game. The third quarter, from opening from the kickoff to start the second half to the literally zeros on the clock in the third quarter, they dominated. And then the final 2 minutes of the game, North Dakota didn't get a yard on that last drive where if they got a first down, the game had been over. The final 2 minutes, they didn't get a yard. K-State went down, and that was the easiest touchdown drive I've seen all season. I don't know if you guys agree with me or not, but that was the easiest touchdown drive I've seen all season. They dominated. And if they would have played like that, not even for 60 minutes, let's say 45, they play like that for 45 minutes, they win this game by 4 touchdowns, right? So the inconsistency is unacceptable, to be quite frank, and they have to get that figured out because there's nothing more frustrating than a team who has the talent who underperforms. If this team sucked, if this offense was horrible, if the defense was terrible, no good, and they were barely squeaking by games, then okay, you understand it. They don't have the Jimmies and the Joes. The problem is they do have the Jimmies and the Joes, and that is the major issue because when you have the Jimmies and the Joes and you're not playing to your potential, that's why fans are so frustrated.
I mean, but do we? I mean, we say that there's been 2 games, and we lost one, and we struggled with an FCS team. I mean, so do we really? I mean, I get it. I don't think we can know that answer until later on in the season.
Sure.
I think I know where you're going, and I think you're 100,000,000% correct. But I don't think we really know that until we get to the end of the season, or at least later on in the season, to where we can say that because we've only seen 2 games. One you lost, and the other one you should have lost against inferior competition. So maybe we don't have the Jimmies and Joes. I don't know. I'd like to think that we do, but you got to show me that. Before. You can't just – and I'm not saying you, Cole. I'm like they need to show me that you do versus just telling me because at this point, I don't believe that. I just don't believe that. You got to show me because I haven't seen it. Not at all.
The reason K-State won wasn't just because they scored a touchdown at the end of the game. They showed urgency. They played knowing they needed to be better. This needs to be the attitude on the first drive. I'm going to hang a lot of this on Matt Wells in his play calling because the first 2 drives of this season offensively in games have been just so bland. I feel like I'm on a toast diet. Almost not all. Many of the big plays for touchdowns or just big plays have been cracking open that playbook a little bit. Let's throw down the middle of the field. But only in the last couple minutes of the game. Let's throw that little out pattern that we miss on. I bet you most Avery's misses are on that outside curl, that throwing it to the sideline. One of my least favorite plays, unless you're going to the sticks to pick up a first down, and they don't go to the sticks, they go underneath the sticks, which drives me insane. If you're going to run that pattern, run it 1 yard beyond the sticks, not 3 yards short, because you know what you're going to be? Pushed out of bounds on a completion 3 yards short. 95% of the time. I really thought they would do some things offensively that would put the playmakers in positions to make plays. They do when they really need to. We need a touchdown. Let's throw the ball downfield. Well, why can't you do that earlier in the game? Kansas State's been really good throwing the ball down the field. That's the one thing they've done at an outstanding level for most of the year. But let's not do that too often. It puts the defense in a bad position. The defense is doing a pretty good job putting itself in a bad position.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You might want to score more points because the defense ain't holding up their end. I think we now see what the wet turf in Ireland did to both teams. If it had been a dry track, I don't know how many points Iowa State would have scored.
Yeah.
I'm really this is one of those situations I get into, and I can't process what I'm seeing from this team. This seems like a willful choice to not care until we absolutely have to. The game's on the line. We got to care now. I'm not saying they don't care, but they act like it. Body language, man. Body language. Have I seen anyone get in people's face and maybe even grab their face mask and say, let's go? Not MFing someone, just getting in their face to fire them up. Someone needs to step forward with some fire. The coaches ain't offering it. I mean, Connor Riley was the most fiery coach. He's gone.
I'm
baffled.
Big B, can this change? Like, can you change that in the middle of the season? Can you change your mindset? Can you flip the switch after getting victory from the jaws of defeat? Can you flip the switch, and can this be fixed the rest of the season?
Absolutely. Look at Baylor last year. And look, I mean, if people aren't familiar with it, Baylor struggled early in the season, lost on a Hail Mary to Colorado. I mean, their season was going down the tube. They were ready to fire the coach basically at the halftime of a football game. It was that bad. Switch got turned, and it was internally. I talked to some Baylor people because through the Big 12 insiders, and they said while Aranda let them build a culture, it was the players inside that locker room that turned it around. And Baylor won 6 games in a row down the stretch last year and saved their season. Ended up winning 8 football games. I don't know if a whole lot of people even know that Baylor won 8 football games because they had written them off. So, yes, Cole, it can 100% change, but you got to change it. Nobody's going to hand you anything. Nobody's going to allow you to just change. You have to make the difference. And Fitz is right. It's got to come from everywhere, though. I mean, it can't just be the players. The coaches have to help. They got to be able to put the guys in positions where they can succeed. I've kind of conceded that this offensive line just can't run block very well, that they are going to have to throw the football to open up the running game. Well, then just do that. I mean, you can watch football games and just see. That's not a hard thing to see. It's just throw it and throw it more often. Now, Avery's got to be way more accurate than what he's been because it seemed like every outbreaking route yesterday was behind or late. And I'm like, Jiminy Christmas, come on, my man. Yeah. But at the same time, maybe don't call so many of those. Maybe call something down the middle of the field, something like that. I just like I said, coaches have to help. It can be turned around, but they have to want to turn it around. So, but I will caution, it's game 2 of a long season. You have another opportunity this coming weekend to do that. We'll get into that, obviously, as the week goes on. But today's a day of venting. Yeah, you can let it out because what we saw, it's not going to be good enough, people. I can tell you that right now. That's not going to be good enough. And we saw other teams in the Big 12 that we think aren't going to be good go dominate FCS opponents. We saw that this weekend. K-State wasn't one of those.
A couple of comments, guys. There's one here about firing Matt Wells. Needs to be fired ASAP. That is going to accomplish absolutely nothing.
Nothing.
The language, it'd be like me and us trying to go learn Japanese or French. Like, the language is there. You can't just go in and replace an offense in the middle of the season. So does Matt Wells need to be better? Yes. Players, coaches, everybody needs to be better. Wells is not off the hook for anything that's happened first 2 games. But I like this comment here from Robbie. Quay Moss, I think Quay Moss can be an absolute leader on this team. I mean, he carries himself with a fiery personality on the field. He's flying, hitting dudes, but he's a dude that comes in from West Georgia. If that's a player that is a leader on your team, you do have a problem. Now, I would love for Quay Moss to be a guy that steps up and is vocal and leads by example as well. But your Avery Johnsons and Dylan Edwards or Jace Brown, guys who have been in the program, Austin Romaine, those need to be the leaders on your team. They are going to, with all due respect to Quay Moss, I would love for him to step up, but they're going to probably gain the attention of the teammates a little bit more. So you need guys like Quay Moss to continue to step up, but at the end of the day, it's on the guys that have been in the program for an extended number of years to really command the respect of that locker room.
I don't disagree, Gilbert, but I do want to push back on that for just a little bit, because when you got a guy like Quay Moss who comes from West Georgia, as you mentioned, it's so easy for him to look around the locker room and say, you guys don't know how good you have it here.
Yep.
You see all this stuff. You didn't get – I didn't get any of this at West Georgia. He came from West Georgia. Let's not forget he's at JUCO before that. He went JUCO, Division II, and now he's playing Power 4 football. I actually kind of like the idea of a guy like Quay Moss being a leader on this team. Step up. Say, if you want to play like this, then go right ahead. But he's taking advantage of his opportunity. I tweeted it last night. He should never come off the field. You know what? He might not be the most skilled player that's in that back end, but he's going to get better. He's going to adjust to the game. He's going to bring the fire. And I think he is going to bring some leadership, because he can look around and say, you guys have no idea how good you have it. And he does not take for granted any snap he's on the field. It's like Reggie Stubblefield. That's who he reminds me of. Reggie was a good leader for this team. And I think Quay Moss can be a good leader for this defense as well.
Sure. I didn't want anything that I said to be a knock at Quay Moss, by the way. I mean, you bring up a good point, Cole.
No, I agree with what both of you said. I want to point this out. We had Quay Monday at the press conference. I thought he was not perfect, certainly, but pretty good in Ireland. Boy, he was unhappy with himself. He was holding himself more accountable than I hear players do in this day and age. A lot of that might be because he knows he can play at this level. He has the opportunity, and he's going to prove himself. I got news for everyone else in the locker room. The stars don't matter. The teams that offered you don't matter. What matters is how you play on a Saturday, how you prepare in the days leading up. And the legacy you're leaving is ho-hum. I get to play college football at a place where 52,000 people will show up every Saturday and cheer for me. Yeah, that's kind of cool. Just taking too much for granted and not willing to really earn it. I know that you work hard. I know the strength coaches are hard on you. I know the coaches yell at you. But ask yourself this. Are you harder on yourself than they are? Because the great players are harder on themselves than any coach or strength coach could be.
Yeah, my thing with that, Fitz, is yes, coaches are yelling at you. Strength coach is yelling at you. But why go through all that if you don't want to put your best product out there on Saturday? I was the type of person, look, I was sensitive to when coaches yelled at me. I didn't perform, and I told them, I'm like, look, I know the difference between coaching and trying to embarrass and humiliate somebody. I go, if you try to humiliate me on the practice field, I'm going to say something back to you. I go, if you want to yell at me because I make a mistake, do that. Coach me hard, but don't humiliate me. But I knew the difference. But also, it's because I wanted to play and I wanted to go out there. Why am I going to go through being yelled at and then to go out there and half-ass it or not really care? Now, granted, I don't know. Maybe somebody needs to say, hey, if this guy's not getting it done, maybe we just need to go in a different direction to give somebody another opportunity. At some point, that has to be the conversation. It can't just continue to be, well, they're going to get better. Well, we're going to coach them up. Maybe you are coaching them up, and that's all certain people are capable of giving you. And if it is, that's not their fault. It means we've got to get somebody else in there that can do the job. And I don't think that maybe that conversation doesn't happen enough, guys, is that, do we want to be the best that we can be? If we do, then sometimes, hey, you know what? You're doing it in practice, but you're not doing it in the game. Who cares what you do in practice if that can't translate to the game? It's not that practice doesn't matter, but if you can't translate it, then we need somebody who can. We got to give somebody else a better opportunity. That's where coaching comes in. But you're right, Fitz. I mean, who the hell wants to – you do work hard, but it's just like, oh, yeah, great, I'm out here, but I know they're yelling at me, but I'll just go through the motions. Like, who wants to go through the motions and go through that ridicule and then just to not perform at your best or to not care that you're not performing at your best? I think that's the main thing. And I think that's where fans get sideways because it doesn't appear that you care. Well, that's tough to stomach. It's tough to see and judge, but you can watch body language.
Yeah.
I mean, you can watch that, and that'll tell the story.
Go ahead, Fitz.
I don't know what else to say at this point. I feel like there isn't enough want to. Guys, you haven't proven a damn thing. You're a new team. You can't. 22, won a Big 12 title. There's hardly any of you left. Until the players take control and say enough, we're going to get mean. We're going to get after it. This won't change. And at this point, the coaches can't MF you into caring. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying they don't care. They just act like it.
They act like it, right?
School. Too cool for school. Anyone else got anything?
Yeah, I'm going to finish with this.
Okay.
I've seen this coaching staff right the ship before. And there's a lot of folks after the game last night upset, frustrated, mad, incredibly angry. I get all of it. And it's valid. I'm not telling you shouldn't be mad, because you should be. It's unacceptable performance. I saw some folks want Chris Kleiman fired. That's not going to happen. That's pretty ridiculous, to be completely honest, to call for the firing of the head coach, and people are comparing Chris Kleiman to Bruce Weber. So stop that, because that does nothing. That's not true. The difference between those two coaches is that Chris Kleiman does hold his players accountable, guys. And I think that we're going to see a team that might look a little different on Saturday. Those guys who look like they didn't care, guess what? Maybe they won't play as much. And if they do play, well, they better look like they care, or else next week will be their last week. This staff has shown that they will make adjustments with personnel. This staff has shown that they know how to make adjustments in the middle of the season. And so will they win next week? I don't know. Will they win 5 games? I don't know. But I do know this, that this coaching staff will not rest until they get the best players on the field. And I have confidence in this coaching staff to get things figured out. And when you have a good head coach, typically the results follow.
We're about 25 hours away from another press conference. We'll be there, of course. Gills and I and some of the young fellas will come with questions. I read one that someone supplied with me. Great question. I do want to say this. Why was Avery successful in that last drive running when he wasn't earlier in the game? Because so much effective quarterback run game is your receivers run off the defense. The whole defense, back end of that defense, was downfield. And he still hesitated. They're just not definitive in what they do. You can see them thinking instead of doing. And they got to figure this out themselves. The players have to figure this out. This is on them. Yeah, the coaches might be failing them in some areas, but you still should be in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing, and doing it with joy and passion. By God, you get to play a football game with 52,000 people, and you act like we deserve this instead of they deserve something from us. That's it. We'll be back tomorrow evening with more thoughts. Yes, please.
What if someone wants to subscribe to GoPowercat? Is there by chance a 75%?
No, we're not taking any. We're full. Look, folks, we're 75% off. There was some controversy in Postgame. I asked my right-hand man. He didn't know when it ends Tuesday night, I believe. The 2nd is Tuesday, right? So we're 75% off. If you're not subscribing, we will be digging into this team in every way possible, doing a lot of incredible VIP content. It's better than these podcasts. So if you're enjoying the podcast, please do so. Subscribe to GoPowercat.com. Don't miss the special. 75% off for an annual. I mean, think about how much you paid for beer yesterday. And I know that probably gave you great enlightenment and knowledge about the world, because that's what beer does for me. But for about $30, you can get a whole year of GoPowercat. And I think it's probably worth your time to take a look at it. Give us a test drive. 1 full year. I think you'll like it. Appreciate everyone watching. Podcast schedule remains the same this week. Insiders, Monday night. We're going to go live this time, just like this one. Wednesday is the Questions podcast. Thursday is the new K-State pregame show. Getting a lot of views. Appreciate it so much. And then the always awesome walkthrough with Monty Spiller that Cole hosts comes on Friday. We give you Tuesday off for reflection and prayer. This football team needs a lot of reflection and prayer right now. We'll see. Hang in there for Cat fans. Quit yelling for everyone to get fired. It ain't happening. They're just shouting into the wind, which might help. I don't know.
This has been a GoPowercat.com and Spirit Street production. Please support this show by subscribing to this YouTube channel or follow us on your favorite podcast platform.